What's interesting about the bike is we should frame it as that it's not natural. and
Yeah.
and even the shift to gravel bikes, people were like, I love the gravel bike. I'm like, you like being upright on a gravel bike instead of chewing on stem. And what we should be thinking about is, first and foremost, is that the way the bike works isn't the way our body works to create a stable system. So what ends up happening is when we stand on the ground, we
Mhm.
actually create a lot of passive and active rotation through the whole leg. And I know that seems strange to people with your feet straight, but that rotation is how your pelvis becomes stable on your femurs. And when you have a stable pelvis on the heads of your legs, then you can have a stable lumbar and a stable thoracic spine up the chain. But what ends up happening is, because that leg is independent, I can't create the same kinds of rotational stability. So then I have a seat here. And what ends up happening is our body often will default to finding these positions of stability. And I'll either
Mhm.
overextend or I'll crank myself into end range flexion. And that's fine, but oftentimes what ends up happening is we lose a lot of capacity in the mix. Then upstream, what we have is an actual real opportunity to grip or be more sort of enlightened about how we interact with the handlebars, but
Mhm.
we can create a more stable trunk head relationship and sort of begin to connect these things. And so, when we're looking at cycling, we can just look at the basic shape for starters and say, well, do you have enough hip flexion? Can you bring your knee to your chest in a full and complete way? And believe it or not, a lot of athletes on the bike can't. They're missing hip
Yeah.
flexion. They have about 90 degrees of hip flexion. So when the pedal stroke comes around and hits the apex, it's basically the femurs pushing the pelvis backwards. And so now I have this sort of tug of war between my femur pushing my pelvis backwards and the
Mhm.
rest of the structure is trying to keep my pelvis forward. And then we start playing this funny tug of war, and I'll move my seat back, and I'll kind of modify my positioning. I like to be more upright, and that upright torso means something I can't generate as much force or be as aerodynamic. And so we kind of solve these things intuitively instead of, let's go ahead and improve your normal hip range of motion. And to be honest, riding a bike is pretty mid-range. So it's not a big
Mhm.
ask. We're not asking you to be able to Olympic lift and be stapled at the bottom or be able to do a pistol. We're just saying, hey, if we improve your hip range of motion,